So as I said, I like to solve the Alaska problem. I'm a Colombian guy, don't know anybody who can buy in Alaska. But if now somebody calls me from Alaska and says, you know what, I'm getting divorced and I need to sell my house, cash out, and stay here as a renter, I know that my algorithm will help me find somebody for that. And so we already transacted about 100 times in 20 different states, and generated about $1.1 million in revenue.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. How much do you value your own time as you think about what your investments are? This is a question that I've been thinking about a lot as I seek to find different partners, as I think about how I want to spend my time, how I want to get new experiences, how I want to plan my year as I think about 2025 and years to come as well. And I also think about this when I think about the types of investments that I want to make as well. I have the opportunity today to talk to Danny Kattan, and today we talked a lot about real estate fundamentals. We talked about how important it is to not just think about the market that you're investing in, the property that you're investing in, but really the people that you're investing with as well, understanding their values and how they not only treat you, but how they think about the customers as well, the tenants, the people that live in the property that you invest in. In fact, not only that, but what business are you really in for that matter? It's not the real estate business, although that might be the industry. Thinking about how is it that you're looking at the demographics? Are you in the people business or are you in the demographics business? Not just real estate is the point. And so we dive into a lot of these things. Danny's got over 20 years of experience. He talked about how he started getting in real estate from with a drink, as he would say. You'll have to listen to the episode to hear the full story, being in investment banking and making pivots. But really, we talk about a lot of different things today. And I think some of those major takeaways, if you're someone that is just getting started in investing and wants some counsel, some guidance on how you can think about how you can make decisions on what to invest in and some shifts that will really make you a better investor, some foundational principles, this is one that you're going to want to listen to. Danny's got a wealth of experience and he's got some great articles that he's written as well. I've had to check out them and they're also in the show notes. So please, please, please have a look at those, listen to this episode and see how what he's written and what he talks about connects. You're in for a good one. As always, please reach out to him. He'd love to have conversations and counsel you any way that he can. And just as well, please reach out to me if you'd like different topics on the episode as well, cover different topics. And I'd love to always hear feedback from you. So subscribe, drop a comment wherever you are, and I will see you in the next episode. For now, please enjoy and listen. Danny, welcome to the show, man. Super stoked to have you here. It's always good to connect with fellow Raise Masters, and I'm glad we got, connected here, especially someone with your experience background. Love reading about your background, listening to interview on Real Estate Investors Radio, and, just like I was saying, I love to do a trailer, as you've heard listening to the episode before, but, just to reiterate a couple things, man. Co-founder of PIA Residential, a private equity real estate firm, over 20 years, real estate experience, acquisition, 400 properties, 2,000 units, over 500 million in real estate, and over 400 million in assets under management. I love this, especially for the audience. Launch internet companies, telecom and biotech companies, BS and industrial engineering from Northwestern, MBA from Wharton, and among other accomplishments too. So your listeners, here on this platform in good spirits with you, you've got the technical background in real estate. This is what this is all about. Thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you, Steven. Thanks for the invitation. Actually, the engineering is from Northeastern. Not that I care, Northeastern, Northwestern. Today, as I tell people, it's not about the school you come from, it's about the grit that you have.
100%.
For those of you listening, people tell me what's the secret. Rubber soul, just walk,
Yeah.
keep on talking, networking. a title will make you, it is coming from a good school that helps, right? But at the end, it's about the grit, man. It's you
Yes.
have to give the good fight. And I'm an operator, I'm an engineer. I like to destroy things and put them back together. Not necessarily in that order, but uh, and the combining the engineering mentality with the masters in finance kind of gives you a different perspective on money and how to build things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I was an investment banker, and then I'm from Colombia, South America. Well, that's where I came back to do after my MBA, and work in railroads and roads and power plants and all those cool things. And as you correctly said it, I started .com and biotech. For those of you who are wondering, biotech, we have an investment in we make fertilizers out of seaweed in Peru, which is pretty
Super
cool.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
very cool. They're all organic, and actually, it's a nice thing. It's a nice
Yeah.
hobby. For now, it's a nice hobby. I haven't seen the payout, but I
We'll
get
get
to
into
travel
that.
to Peru once every 2 years.
We'll get into that because I love what you were talking about there too. We'll save that for later on
Yeah,
your thoughts and hobbies. But I totally agree. Grit and resilience, they're so important. I only mentioned the schools in addition with some of the experience just to kind of give that background and of having the technical aspect as well, and and that's really it. But one of the things I think is so important to get into someone's story, just like yourself,
sure.
and I get this question all the time, from my colleagues, from other investors, et cetera, is, what was that moment, or what was, those experiences that compounded, that gave you the kind of the oh shit that you should get into real estate, or how did that kind of the final straws or whatever it was? You know where I'm going with this, right? So
Yeah,
how do we get into that?
everything starts with a drink and ends up with a drink. And so,
Okay, Colombia, huh? All right, tell me.
no, actually here, but actually in Colombia, yes, So I was working as an investment banker in Colombia, and everybody was doing the .com. This is '99, and I had too much to drink the night before, and I went to the pharmacy to get some aspirin, and then I saw this guy selling the Panini albums, the soccer albums,
Okay.
and the trading cards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh crap, this is a good idea to do an internet company about. So I decided to run with it. People told me I was an idiot, it was not going to work. Never tell that to an entrepreneur, but you never tell, like, if you want to discourage an entrepreneur, tell me it's not going to work.
Right. Exactly.
So I was about to quit my job anyway. I had enough of being an investment banker, had enough of being in Colombia. I love my country, but at that time it just, it's hard to be there. Moved to Miami, started this .com digital trading cards, took the technology to Panini in Italy. They didn't like it, but Disney liked it, and the National Hockey League and Fox and Sony Entertainment Television. Anyway, the company went like this and then like that.
Yep.
And then I had to pay my bills, and then so I started a telecom company, Voice over IP.
Nice.
We were one of the first, clients of Vonage.
Oh wow!
Right, and so long story short, I had an apartment that I had initially rented in Brickell and then bought.
Nice.
And I needed money to pay for my credit cards, which were like up to the wazoo. I was already, resulting to like selling my airline miles. And so I went to get a mortgage, and the guy's like, "Yeah, sure, not a problem. Fog the mirror."
Yeah.
And
Heartbeat.
Then, here's heartbeat, and I'm like, "This is not good."
Yeah.
Right? It's like back in the .com days,
Mm-hmm.
and so at that moment, I wasn't doing really well in life. You got this whole thing where, as an entrepreneur, you have to go the ups and the downs.
Yeah.
Any entrepreneur that doesn't experience that, it's,
they're not in the
not
game.
going to get the grit. Any entrepreneur will go through that. And then you start realizing that all these idiots were just basically, making a line in a condo selling office, and then they were coming out with a contract and then flipping it, and it's like, doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just because the salesperson in a condo sales office and you can get 2 contracts, and then you come out and an hour later you make 20, this doesn't make any sense. I started saying, you know what, this is a bubble's gonna crash. And I was in a party, and I was, I guess, wouldn't call it half drunk, but I was happy. And my friends at the time were calling me Torpedo Catan, because everything that they said is like, oh, that thing doesn't work.
He's gonna torpedo it. Got
Right?
it.
This is like black cloud in my head. And this gentleman, older guy, to this day I don't remember his face. They changed my life because he said, oh, it's going to be like back in the day in the savings and loan crisis, late 80s, early 90s, that, people bought loans for pennies on the dollar. Like, I really don't care how drunk you are. Somebody tells you can buy stuff for pennies on the dollar. You're like, whoop. And then I researched it. I'm like, okay, I want to go into this. So the first thing he said is like, a lot of people make money buying paper. Now, I'm an engineer. I like to understand how the sausage is made.
Yep.
So Steven, if he calls me and says, Danny, let's go buy McDonald's, I'll be like, great, Steven, I'm going to go for 4 months, go flip burgers and understand how it works from the inside, and then we'll buy the McDonald's.
100%.
So I said, I need to learn how, the mortgages are made, and I went to work for Countrywide. Mm-hmm. So Countrywide back then was the largest originator of mortgages in the world. I work in the pit, with a bunch of mortgage brokers. Very cool people. And after like 2-3 weeks, my boss, Ray Duran, calls me, locks me out in his office. The guy's that tall dude, is like 7 foot tall, ex-highlight player, looks at me, he's like, are you a corporate spy? Like, are you writing a book? I'm like, what gives, Ray? I'm scared, right?
Yeah,
like, why is the guy with an MBA who can be my boss's boss's boss can be here with a bunch of people barely graduated from high school? I'm like, well, I want to learn how the sausage is made. So when it implodes, I can go buy paper. Mm-hmm. And this is 2006.
Okay. Right before everything.
Yeah, 2008, basically. I was there when the FBI came to arrest people.
Wow.
Okay. And so 2008, we're trying to buy mortgages, or I'm trying to buy mortgages. And I'm trying to convince people that this is a good business. Mm-hmm. And I started to look at the pricing of the mortgages. It didn't make sense. And then you realize that, shit, they're mispricing this, right? The underlying asset, which is the single family house, is being mispriced until one banker, I think it was from Deutsche Bank, told me, listen, we have this issue. We get a bunch of properties. We don't know what to do with them. And again, when you have this supply-demand imbalance.
Yep.
So I called my current partner, Jimmy Levy. He used to have a couple of franchises that we buy ugly houses, and he has sold, flipped, about 800 homes. And he'll tell you wild stories also. And I called him and says, Jimmy, this might be a good opportunity to buy houses. I don't know much about real estate. You know a lot. I know about finance. Why don't we start together and let's buy one and then fix it? And then, and he goes, we have no money. I'm like, well, we'll find a schmuck that gives us money. And then, that there goes their money racing, right? You have to go ask.
Yep.
And imagine in 2008 asking people for money. People are scared. Madoff just happened. Mm-hmm. People thinking that the world's going to croak again. And we went to people and said, you know what? We're buying a house with your money. It's in your name. It's in your title. This is not a fund. You're just going to pay me a fee and we're going to do it for you. After the third house, we ended up creating our property management company. Then eventually, you're going to like this one, we ended up creating software to manage properties because there was no property management software for single family houses. But guess what? All my experience and the .com and the telecom and the people that I met, the technology people that I met in there, mm-hmm. I brought in a person that I knew, and so he started coding. Eventually started growing this thing, getting more investors. We were buying properties in Miami for about $60K, putting $30K in, and renting at Section 8 for about $1,600. It's a good,
Yeah.
The thing with real estate, Steve, is that people concentrate too much on the numbers and they really don't understand the numbers. Right?
Tell me what you mean by that.
Cap rate. What do you rather have, a 4 cap rate or a 6 cap rate?
Higher.
Wrong.
Oh, when buying or selling, or just in general?
If you want to buy a cap rate, you rather buy a 4 or a 6?
I'd rather buy
a 6. You're going to tell me a higher number. It's wrong, because a cap rate only measures the income in a given time. What if you buy in a 4 cap rate that is really badly managed and stabilizes at an 8?
Okay.
Right?
Sure. Fair enough.
Same thing with yield. It depends on what type of debt you have. Sometimes it's IRR. IRR is one of the most complex measurements that you can have. It's just influenced by so many things, and people just don't understand it, how it comes. You can still talk with finance professors that they measure. Everybody measures IRR the same way. There's one formula for that, but all the risk associated with the IRR, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we started talking to people about this, and starting getting some traction. Eventually, we created a platform that was vertically integrated. We had about 70 people. We managed to raise about $60 million from a ultra high net worth individual from Latin America, that he's an industrialist and liked what we were doing. He liked our platform. We built a platform, right? A lot of people think real estate is about speculating, but what we like about real estate, especially residential real estate, it's simple to understand. You have to buy at a discount to replacement cost. That's number one, right? It doesn't make sense if you're not buying with discount to replacement cost. Second of all, you have to buy at some sort of cap rate that allows you to carry that property. And again, that cap rate depends where you measure it at, right? And
do you mind expanding on that part for me? On why you would, I know this might go into a much bigger conversation, but maybe just briefly why you would want that lower cap rate.
Yes, and I'll explain it, but I'll tell you, I have a bunch of articles I've written in Forbes that delve into that. You can go Forbes, Danny Kattan, but it's simple. A cap rate, for those of you listening, is your rent minus expenses over the price that you paid. Okay, but what's the cap rate of an empty building? Should be negative, right?
Sure.
But how do you measure an empty building? You're like, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to repair it, and then the cap rate will be a stabilized cap rate.
Okay.
What is the cap rate of a badly managed property? Maybe it's a 3%. It stabilizes at a 10.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Yep. Fair point.
Right. Then you also, when you're buying things, you have to consider the ability to leverage. A lot of people said, well, leverage is risk. No, leverage is not risk. A lot of people pay for things from their pocket. They don't bring a bank in. If you are new in real estate, you should be buying with leverage, because you have a partner, which is called the bank, that's going to make sure that you do things right.
Right.
Okay. Second of all, leverage is not risky, because it's your ability to pay that creates risk and leverage.
Right.
Now, think about two properties. One that you buy with $100,000 cash, and the other one that you buy with an $80,000 loan and $20,000 cash. Two exactly the same properties. A year later, both sell for $120,000. The one that you bought without leverage, you invested $100, you got 20 back, you only made 20%.
Exactly.
Right? The one where you got with leverage, you invested 20 because the bank put 80.
Yep.
And then you got 20, you get 100% return. 100%. It's the same property, the same risk, exactly the same, right? Where would you rather be, right? So in real estate, a lot of the money is made using leverage because you don't have to use that much equity. People then will go out and say, well, but you know what? If you're levered, what happened if the property that you bought suddenly goes down in value because, something happened in that neighborhood?
Right.
I'm like, okay, but it means that if you were willing to invest $100,000, then buy 5 properties with $20,000 down, and now you have a portfolio effect, right?
Right.
And so again, you're a technical guy that programs, and if I can tell you things, you'll be like, no, duh, you used whatever code. I'm stuck in basic, man. That's how I learned, right?
Got you.
I learned basic. If then go, then do that, whatever, right?
Fundamentals are great, though.
Yeah, but my point is there's so much nuance in what everybody does, right? And then real estate is not as easy. Let's go read a book and learn about real estate. But yes, it's as easy as that.
Right.
Because at the end, it's basic. You have a house. Does it rent? It doesn't rent. If it rents, you have to rent to a good tenant. Management is another problem. Leverage is another problem. And for those of you, risk plus risk is not 2R, but it's risk squared. And that's very important, right? And this is what people really don't understand. When people buy multifamilies, they go like, "Oh, I'm going to buy a multifamily. I am going to buy a multifamily that is dilapidated. I'm going to fix it. I'm going to rent it in the future. I'm going to cash out." I'm like, wait, hold on. Now you're like R plus R plus R plus R plus R.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Versus I'm going to buy multifamily to fix that. It needs a little bit of tender care, but it's stabilized. It's different risk.
100%. Yeah.
And a lot of people actually played with fire, got really burnt, especially because, they thought that, dealing with variable debt was not going to have consequences. For those of you listening, you are buying real estate. If you were very good at predicting what the bond will do, go trade bonds. You make billions. Okay? Don't screw up with the bond. Nobody knows where the bond's going to be. Nobody.
This is such a good segue too, and it's fun to hear about how it started with the drink, and then it kind of you got the snowball continuing to get bigger and bigger.
I'm not gonna lie to you. You're not my wife.
Yeah. Well, I like what you were saying at the very end of some of those other episodes of, well, Danny, what if you're wrong about what you're doing? But we'll save that for another time. The point I wanted to pivot to was what you're talking about of, you mentioned something about being levered and getting loans and bringing in, we'll call it someone who gives debt. We'll call it banks. And you talked about using Freddie and Fannie, but you also talked about cycles. You mentioned about you referenced someone, and I forget who, but every 7 years, these different events happen.
Well,
right?
A while back, I was younger, had, more hair, looked better. I remember reading a book called the Great Depression of the 90s called Ravi Batra. And the guy said, economic cycles go in 7 years. That's why you have the 7 cows come from the Bible. I mean, the guy is basically saying, this 7 thing cycle, it's like in nature, in numbers. The reality is, real estate goes in cycle. They overbuild, right? Then they sell cheap. Then overbuild, they sell cheap, right? Everything has to be in cycle. But one thing is correct. We're not an economist. I don't know. All I know is that I'm most of the time wrong. That's what my wife tells me, but anyway.
Sure.
But again, it's not about being right or being wrong. If you play this is in the long term, this isn't a trade.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You have to identify that real estate, you're not in the business of buying properties. You're in the business of buying properties that are in places where people are coming in to work. And factories are coming in because of the people are coming in. So really, you're in the business of demographics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so that's where you have to understand where the things go. I mean, I know right now Austin is very beat up because of all the overbuilt, but Austin is Austin.
Yep.
I mean, right now it's a great time to buy in Austin because it will always be Austin.
Right.
San Francisco. You cannot replicate the intellectual sort of world that it's created in San Francisco. If you are going to start a technical company, you go to San Francisco because you can meet people in a bar that will change the way that company will be done.
Absolutely. It's right? Where you're rubbing shoulders. Like you say, it's where all the IP and people are.
And so San Francisco, right now, it's a great opportunity to buy. Now we have to talk about California. Do you want to own really things in California? Is the cap rate in California relative to a cap rate in Texas? Is it worth paying half of it? All those things. I wouldn't. I will not invest in tenant-friendly states. I will invest in landlord-friendly states because I think it's wrong. I think that. See, a lot of people think that landlording is about the big bad wolf. That it's the big landlord. Right. And the small sort of tenant, the mom and pop that, was renting a house.
Right.
There's 16 million homes right now owned by landlords in the United States. Only 5% are institutional. The rest are mom and pops. So, Aunt Esther decides to buy a house instead of putting the money in the stock markets because the stock markets are risky and, it's a racket. Okay. And then she's relying on that money to pay for her food and, her lifestyle, because she decided, I'm going to save enough money to own a house that pays me rent. And suddenly that renter decides, I'm not going to pay rent, and I'm going to go to a judge and say, poor me, I'm not going to pay rent. What happens with Aunt Esther?
Yep.
Nobody cares. Oh, because she owns a home. So I think that's wrong, and you have to also understand what's the downside of certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I tell people, we are not in the business of investing money in real estate. We're in the business of asset preservation.
Mm-hmm.
You work extremely hard, Steve, to make some money. Then you give it to a schmuck that takes some unnecessary risks and calls you back and says, hey, Steve, man, sorry, we lost the money.
No good.
It's not about return on money. It's about return of the money.
Yeah.
Right? And so there are certain ways where you can become an investor in real estate. And I think that if you want to take risks, yes, there's better ways to take risk. Right? I mean, if you want to speculate with real estate because you think that if you invest in a certain city, the city is going to go up, what's the difference between that and speculating with Bitcoin?
Right. So talk to me about that. This is such, and I really, feel free to expand on this too, because I get the questions. Hey, Arita, my last name. Hey, Steven, it's, you're doing this real estate stuff. I'm looking at these, these places and properties to go get a single family home. I'm looking at Airbnbs. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm like, whoa. It's like, for all the reasons, this may not be the right place for you if you're already busy and you want to, focus more on your career, et cetera, et cetera. So question being is, how would you advise in this question when someone asks you, who's a tech professional working 40, 50, 60 hours a week, a stressful job at the Amazon, Netflix, Google, et cetera, how would they go and start investing in real estate that fits maybe some of their goals for that type of person?
Well, the first thing is how much you value your money. I'm sorry, how much you value your time.
Yeah.
So, and what's the reason? And we were having this conversation, right? It's we all know the friend that basically wakes up every day and it's about the stock market and reads, 2 hours worth of the Wall Street Journal and, watches every, CNBC and everything, right? And can only talk about stocks and, stocks this and stocks that. And, bottom line, easy, a guy like that or a girl spends 3-4 hours a day, if not more. Okay. Looking at stocks. And if you ask a person like that, it says, how much you're beating the market for. Like, if the market's at 10%, all you do, and you manage your stocks, how much you're beating it for? Probably they go like 2-3%. 3% on a 10% return, it's 30%. As I told you, if you can outbeat the market 30% consistently, you can be a billionaire. Easy. Okay? But let's give them the benefit of the doubt. They can always beat the market by 3%. And they have in the market, I don't know, $200,000. So you're making $6,000 extra, but you're spending 5 hours a day. Think about what you can do with those 5 hours a day. Now, if you divide, 5 hours times, I don't know, 5 hours times 300, it's 4 hours times 5 hours times 300 is 15. It's $1,500. It's 1,500 hours, right?
Yeah,
1,500 hours.
Yep.
On $6,000, you made $4 an hour.
Yeah, not worth it at all.
So is this an investment or it's a hobby? In many conversations I have with the guy says, or the girl, oh, it's a hobby. Okay, now we have a different story, man. You can do whatever you want, right? So the approach to real estate is, if you're going to buy one house because you think you can do better than me buying one house, tell me why. And some people's like, oh, I don't have to spend that much in maintenance because, I can go with my son and do it. I'm like, okay, it's a different story. I don't need a property manager. I can manage it myself. It's a different story. Now, alternatively, I've seen professionals pivot very nicely into owning 10, 20, 30, 40 houses because, they do it. They do it with a business plan, with a purpose. I will never argue with somebody who tells me I want to buy one house because I want to learn. And after I learn, I want to buy another one. And after I learn, I want to buy another one and another one and another one and another one.
Yep. Strategies there.
But for them to leave their job that, you guys who are in tech make hundreds of thousands of dollars right?
Yep.
And your time is very valuable. You have to put it in context.
Absolutely.
And by the way, one is not exclusive of the other. You can right now buy into platforms that you can buy participations. You can do this thing with 3 or 4 buddies. So instead of buying one house, you buy 4. Now you have the issue of societal partnerships where things will go wrong, which I've seen it. Right. My advice is craft a story of why you're buying real estate that it's logical to you, but do not think that it's because you're going to outperform a professional.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. And the second one I'd like to get your take on here too is I was just talking to someone before, inside the company who, was looking to, who wants to go, sees what one of his friends is doing to, buy land, develop it and stuff. And that person has done this a couple of times and he's seen success. And I'm like, okay, great. But maybe you might want to consider working with certain partners who, give up like half of the deal or something so that you can learn along the way. He's like, no, I don't want to give the 50,000 and, half of the equity so that, they can have it. I'd rather go in and put in the 100, 150 and, I'll take that risk, but all of it's mine,
Good for him. You know what? I'm going to go read a couple of manuals on JavaScript and become a programmer and, maybe Amazon will hire me. Great, because it's that easy, right? Listen, it's not hard either, right? Again, people have certain abilities to learn and to push. I'm in the planning and zoning board of the city of Hallandale, so I have inside knowledge of how to do these things. It is lengthy, man. If you choose the wrong lawyer, you're done. Right? If you don't know what you're buying, and they find eggs from a certain turtle, you're done.
Sure.
Right? So my advice is to seek professional advice. Whatever you're going to do, go find somebody who's done it before, and say, "Hey, man, I'll pay you $1,000 to talk to you for an hour." Sure. What do you want to know? Right? Probably do it for free.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Or for a big beer, but that's a different story. And do it, but make it purposeful. Don't think that you read a book, now you're an expert, right?
Yeah.
I got 20. Listen, I walked into 6,000 homes to buy 400. Now we have a hard money lending company. We have a company called PIA Lending. We take money from investors, let's say at 8.5, and we lend it at 11.5. And we deal with fix and flippers. And sometimes they just bring me, I like to borrow money for this property, and they show me pictures, and I'm like, oh, your budget is low. Like, how do you know these things? Because I did 6,000 budgets in my head looking at property. Like, I used to walk into a property, do a budget in my hand, send an email to my assistant. They will make the bid that day. So we literally bid it in 6,000. I mean, there's a lot of details that go in here, and we still screwed up. But back then we were buying for so cheap, nobody saw our mistakes. For all intents and purposes, we're geniuses, right? We made a mistake. We made plenty of mistakes, got covered by the fact that we were bought cheap.
6,000 homes looked at and underwrote and bought the 400 properties.
Yeah, I walked into 6,000 homes. Yeah. I mean, there were days where I was looking 25 homes, and there's a year when I drove 24,000 miles just in South Florida.
Got you. Tell me a little bit about how, I don't think I've had anyone on the podcast so far who's talked to me about the private money lending stuff. This is kind of a fun one. I'll pivot to some other topics. Tell me a little bit about that, the listener, how the private money lending business works.
I actually have a primer on that. I'll send it to you to share, but yeah, it's simple in the sense that you have to look at the property. Somebody comes to you and say, Danny, I want to buy that property to do a fix and flip. So we first of all, we look at the property. Hard money basically It's you're looking at the property, you're not really looking at the individual. And people come to you because you can do it faster, better than a bank. Okay, maybe a bank will lend you to there at 7.5%. I'll lend you at 12, but I can do it in 3 days. A bank will take 60 days, and they'll
Yep.
probably deny it because you're at 639 and not at 640.
Right.
I don't care about credit score. I don't care about experience either. If we're gonna go to there, okay, because you can look at somebody in the eye and said, I know you're not experienced, fix and flipping, but you're an entrepreneur who's has done, I don't know, a bowling alley or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you have to have this conversation,
You evaluate them differently.
right? And then you look at the human being, right? I once denied a loan to somebody because the guy just arrived late and never apologized.
Yep.
Not that I care. I mean, but if this is how you treat the people, it's what it is, right? Then one day you're gonna pay me late, and I just, we got the no asshole policy. We don't deal with assholes. That
Values are important.
Yes, especially because we're nice people and we treat people nice. We spend sometimes hours with an investor who wants to do a $300,000 loan, where we're making maybe $6,000. Okay, and we might dedicate them, hours to them, which is cool because thankfully I've been fortunate enough that the Almighty has given me this great people to have around, and for me passing the torch to other people is great. So when a fix and flipper comes to me, I'm like, hey, this is how you do the business, and hopefully you do one more and three more, and because at the end they'll come to me, right?
Yeah.
So what you do is you look at the property and say, okay, how much you're buying it for, how much money you're going to put in, and what's the after repair value. And you underwrite about an 80% loan to cost maximum with 100% of the rehab and about 70 to 75% of the after repair value. These are single families and small multifamilies, only residential. We know residential very well. And we'll get into that because I'll talk about residential and technology in a second because you guys are going to appreciate this. And then so you put a first lien mortgage on it, and then you hire a very good lawyer to do the loan work. You underwrite this. I know exactly how much a property will be worth after repair because I know how to evaluate those things. And I do it. Yeah, you can do it yourself. It's not that hard. But again, I go back to the basics. Okay, you're doing it because you want to do an extra. Instead of giving it to me at 9, you're going to do at 12. Great, not a problem. You're going to make 2 extra points on $200,000 is $4,000. How much is your time worth? And, what will you do with the house if they ever defaulted on?
Yeah, and what are you going to do with your extra time?
Yeah, so I will send you a primer on Hard Money Loan that explains everything, so you can share with your audience.
I'll get it in the show notes. Yeah.
One of the reasons we're because you asked me, what if I'm wrong?
Specifically, where let's save that one for a little bit more later, and let's pivot more to about this is PIA Residential. You're telling me that you did single family, but you're also have the private money lending business, and of course multifamily as well because of scale, right? And the amount of assets under management, et cetera. One of the things that, just to kind of frame this up for you and just a listener here again, is you're talking about different markets. You're also talking about cycles, but the crafting the story for this episode, I think it's really important, is not just thinking about counseling someone who's coming to talk to you as an investor of how much is their time worth, how much more valuable is it to borrow someone's 10,000 hours like yourself, right? But to also think about, as an investor, what does the investment look like, right? So like you're talking about South Florida, but tell me a little bit about like different markets, how you think about primary markets, secondary markets, and how you pick markets that you've moved into as well.
The properties we bought initially, the single families, were in South Florida because we live here.
Yeah.
And it didn't make any sense for me to go buy properties in Tampa when, we have a big backyard.
Sure.
Right? I think that real estate is local. Okay. And as we started growing, then we started venturing, into Palm Beach, which is, at the end, South Florida, point to point is about 2 hours.
Okay.
Right. It's long. But when we sold, give or take for a 5.25 cap rate to Cerberus. We sold 200 of our homes in 2018 to Cerberus, because at that moment in 2018 we were tracking this, what I call the three legs of real estate, which is replacement cost. You have to, your cost of capital has to be lower than your cap rate, and your economic value has to make sense. If it's cheaper to own than to rent, you should be buying. If it's cheaper to rent than to buy, then you should be selling.
Got it.
And those three things were already in the red lines. And at that time, Cerberus came and made us an offer for our whole portfolio. We ended up selling 200 houses to them at $250,000 each. We thought that, we were in the glory.
Yeah.
And knowing what we know, that was the right call. Today, those houses are worth, the $250,000 home is worth probably $500,000. Okay, it doubled. It doubled because of COVID and because with all the things that happened. But certainly nobody expected that to happen. Remember, it's 2008. It's about 10 years after the
GFC,
the GFC
financial crisis. Yep.
And so everybody's expecting kind of like, the cycle to throttle down.
Right.
And we looked at ourselves and we said, okay, what do we do with this? What do we do with this money? Now we have millions in our name. And, I opened my big mouth and I said, well, I think that we should stay in real estate because real estate does not get affected as much by technology. And my partners, I'm like, oh, here you go. You're bullshitting again. Where do you come from, with these ideas in your mind?
Another drink, no doubt.
No, that was sober. And I'm an engineer, and one of the things that I started looking at is, real estate is not just real estate; it's what technologies affect real estate. And Steve, if I was to tell you 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, even, hey, let's go buy this triple net of this company called Barnes and Noble, you'd be like, have you heard of like Amazon?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yet we still buy, shopping centers like there's no technological effect, or warehouses like, a 3D. Imagine what a 3D printer will do to a warehouse full of car parts.
Oh, man, for sure.
Yep. Imagine what a self-driving pod will do to a self-storage facility.
Yeah.
Imagine what a self-driving car, will do to all the space that we have in parking lots. Or, electric vehicles will do to a gas station. And you talk to the gas station guys and they're like, yeah, but, we're never going to transition to, I'm going to build here. Look, this is corner of Main and Main. I'm like, yeah, but there's 4 spaces here at the corner of Main and Main. Everybody's going to build at the same time. So you're going to have a lot of supply.
Yeah.
But actually, I wrote for the Star Wars fans out there, I wrote an article that says, what can we learn about Star Wars and multifamily? You like this one.
Okay, tell me.
So the Millennium Falcon had 7 beds. True. You
Really?
can Google the blueprint. I was really amazed because one day I was saying, you know what? In the future, why is it that futuristic movies still have people sleeping in beds with sheets?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
You remember the scene with Princess Leia? She's in a bed with sheets, with satin sheets. Right?
Sure. Okay, yeah.
And you're like, okay, so we're traveling at 10 times the speed of light,
Yeah, got it.
Going through black holes, and we have beds.
Antiquated. Some things aren't adding up.
Right. So the bottom line, everybody needs a place to sleep. And, curiosity, I'm like, okay, so how many beds did the Millennium Falcon have? And I actually pulled the blueprints. They have the blueprints. And it had, was it 3 bunks and 3, like two, three bed bunks and then a bed. And it had a toilet for Chewbacca. God knows what happened there. I still think that the need of humans to have a place they call home or to sleep is very important.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what happens in society with technology and work from home and AI, we need a place to live. So I have guaranteed tenants. When we had the single family homes in the middle of the GFC, we never had a vacancy that was not created by price. Meaning, I could have rented that house for $1,400 immediately, but if I wanted to get $1,500, I might have to wait a month.
Got it. Yep.
Yet, when you have office space, you can give it away, and nobody will come.
Right.
When you have
But you
retail, you
need
can
it
give it
there.
away, nobody will come. When you have warehouse, you can give it away, nobody will come. It's not elastic. You don't go like, hey, if I give you more office space, will you bring more people to work with you?
Yep.
Okay. And this is what I like about residential. Residential basically is a first need. Now, you have to be located in the right place. So let's talk about geographies.
Mm-hmm.
Secondary markets have better returns than primary markets by definition. Okay. The
Yep.
secondary market has better returns. Now, primary markets like Miami 20 years ago was Miami. Nobody was really coming to Miami. Very few people. Suddenly Miami goes J curve.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, cities like Tampa were like nothing happening. Tampa was like a tertiary city and then
Right.
started the J curve, right? There's, Asheville, North Carolina, suddenly just, J curve. So you have the optionality in secondary and tertiary markets that if you're in the right market and it just happens that, somehow it gets discovered by, the millennial influencer of the year, whatever it is, and everybody
Yep.
start going there, just can go like that. But nevertheless, it's still very constant because you have labor. People are coming there. It's the Southeast. You have people going there for weather, for retirement, for jobs. One of the
Mm-hmm.
first things that we did is we bought in Pensacola. Pensacola is a military city.
Mm-hmm.
It's the birth of the naval aviation.
Yeah.
So think about it. It's 2019. We're still thinking that something's going to happen with the economy because, it's been 10 years. Why don't we go buy our first building where you have a lot of presence from the government? And if there's any issues, that the government's there, to pay its employees.
And they're not leaving.
And they're not leaving. So COVID happened. Our properties were doing extremely well.
Yep.
And then it was a shit show because they started giving money for free. And then everybody became a syndicator and the whole thing and, just got a whack. Right.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we went from Pensacola, we went to Jacksonville, then we went to Savannah, Georgia, then went to a place called Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, all those were GPLPs, usually about, $11, $12 million equity checks. Everything was done with fixed debt with Freddie and Fannie and only fixed debt because we're not in the business of creating financial engineering around an asset.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, plain vanilla, middle of the fairway. And we lost a lot of investors because like, oh no, so-and-so gives me 20%, you guys are giving me 15% IRR. I'm like, yeah, but we have less risk than this person. Well, how do you know? I'm like, well, they don't have fixed debt. I have fixed debt. And so there's so many levers that you move in when you're buying a property that is very hard for the individual to keep track of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I go back to what you guys do. I mean, what you guys do as people play with computers is not just like, oh, you know what? I just turn on the computer and, a couple of codes here. And, it's more complex than that. And we all know that. And hope everybody's listening to this. You don't buy properties. You buy partnerships with people.
Absolutely.
And when you buy into a property, when you buy into a GPLP, or when you invest with somebody, you should know them well. And you know how many people have asked me 95% of the time about the property and the market and the cap rate. And nobody's ever said to me, who are you? What are your values? What do you think about this? Read about me. Ask me about my family. What do I think about ethics? All those things. They don't care. They look at the underwriting, right?
Because they think that's the important part.
Right. And so if you're going to invest with somebody who's been doing it for a while, invest with somebody who has more than one partner, invest because, what happens is we're three people and we're not alike.
Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be except on values.
Right. Values were all aligned, but we're not alike. I mean, I always said that it's about price per pound. You cannot buy things that are above replacement cost. It just doesn't make any sense. When you sell them, you cannot sell them above replacement cost either. Has to be at a discount to market. Right. My partners are very like, oh, we have to be very conservative in this. The other partner is a pet peeve in operation, a pet peeve in everybody has their own thing. And when we bring everything together, we de-risk a lot of the things. And so investing in properties, the property is the least of what you have to look at. Look at the market. Look at the people you're doing it with. Look at how they're doing it. Look at how they present themselves, right? Look at what, you know. I'll send you one of our offering memorandums, right? It's short. It shows the math. It shows, what the projections are. I've seen offering memorandums that are like 70 pages.
Way too
And
much.
and the first thing is like, 70 pages. This is crap. Without even reading, I know that somebody have to tell me 70 pages. They're trying to hide stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then you start to look for comparables. It's not there. You start to look for, show me the math. It's not there. There's a lot of things where people go wrong in investing because they let themselves be led by the numbers, by the way, numbers that they don't understand.
Exactly. Yeah. The property is the least important part, because thinking about, who the people are, who the team is, their experience, their background, how they come together, and that they don't all have the same skills and talents. They come to fulfill different things. It could be some people are taking on more of those duties and roles of, the asset manager. Some people are more playing that, the quote unquote, communicating well, aka could be a portion of investor relationships, whatever, right? But they all have those different skills, just like you would have any team that does well. There's uniqueness, right? And then, of course, like you're talking about secondary markets, and I had to think about that for a second. Secondary or tertiary markets could do better, and I'm like, well, yeah, of course. I didn't hear it that way before, but hearing it this way is like, if you go to a place where things are like, a Manhattan, whatever, it's like, okay, talk about top tier. Like, how are you gonna make things? You're not going to get margin there right away unless you have a backdoor or somebody got leveraged for the wrong reasons kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
But if you're at a place where you're getting it where it hasn't popped yet, right, or discovered or whatever, that's the same. That's just another way of saying it, that I'm interpreting it. So,
Well, you have to look for the alpha, right?
yeah.
Waiting for a city to pop is beta. Right.
Explain alpha and beta for the listener here, please.
So beta is market risk, right? If the economy does well, we do well. You buy a building where we're just waiting on the economy to do well, and the building does well, then you're not bringing anything to the table.
Mm-hmm.
That's beta. Alpha is what you bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to buy a building that is in really bad shape, and I'm going to fix it and going to bring better tenants. And by the way, be careful with that statement, because sometimes people over improve properties thinking that they can charge more rent, and it turns out to be that the market's not there for.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about the difference between value add and proven value add.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And proven value add is not like, oh, the guy who's selling me the property already improved five units in the property and look how much rent they're charging. No, that's a three-card multiplay they're playing on you. You have to look at all the properties around. Have they done that? Are you the idiot who's going to do it first and don't do it? Right. You have to de-risk that. So beta is basically what you do to the property or what you do to bring, value into the proposition. Okay.
Got it.
And so betting on the stock market alpha is what you bring to the table. Betting on the stock market is beta. Right? Now, if you have intrinsic knowledge that something's going to happen with a certain stock, not inside knowledge, intrinsic knowledge, because you somehow read an article here, and you figure out that something's going to happen.
Yep.
That's alpha. That's because you created it. Okay. Mm-hmm. I think Miami, it's alpha. I'm sorry, Miami is beta. Miami is just, people are just waiting for people to come more to Miami because Miami, right?
Getting caught in the wave.
Yeah. Going to Pensacola and waiting for the Pensacola to hit the J curve is a beta. But if I buy a building in Pensacola that has old decrepit kitchens, fix the kitchens and make the property better and manage it better, that's the alpha. So the return that we do in value adds comes from alpha, doesn't come from beta. That is the beautiful thing about value add multifamily. If you're doing it well, you're creating alpha, right? Actually, the exit cap rate in 5 years from now, it's wider than the entry cap rate. So you're actually saying, the city's not even going to be doing better. You're just assuming that it's going to be worse.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why you have to take risk out of the table by having fixed debt.
That was one of the things that I wanted to raise too. What were some of the, so for context, what has been seeing a lot in, actually, I'll turn this into a question so that you can speak more intelligently on it too, is, what are we seeing over the last couple of years that's getting people into, syndicators into hot water, into trouble? It's floating debt that they can't refi or get out of, right?
What can go wrong when a dentist thinks that he can raise money from his friends and go buy a building? Just think about the statement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I invested with this guy who was a dentist and, bought a building and he did very well because, everything did well and sold it and, made 3x.
Sure.
But he's still a dentist. He hasn't put his 10,000 hours. And he's making a lot of money from people up front because, he's charging a lot of these fees, okay,
Mm-hmm.
to syndicate. And so when we were raising money for these buildings, I approached a couple of friends that I knew and I know they were syndicating. I'm like, hey, man, will you help me raise? He's like, yeah, but I want, a portion of the GP and I want like 3%. I'm like, we're not charging 3% to our investors. How do you get away with charging 3% to the investors you raise from us? Oh, we charge 3% and it's not 70-30, but it's 60-40. And you have all this, salt and pepper and this, type of like, everybody's getting screwed because nobody knows how to ask questions. Right? And then for them to make the numbers work, they needed to create something where like, oh, we're gonna buy a building that's in really bad shape. It's 40% occupied. And because we're so good at what we do, in 2 years from now, we're going to turn around everything and then we're going to press the button and it's going to sell. And it worked from 2020 to 2022.
Mm-hmm.
In 2023, that started moving. And then suddenly the refi wasn't there. And, there was an oversupply of buildings and the rent wasn't there. And it didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And so people lost 100% of their equity. Mm-hmm. I know people that not only lost 100% of their equity, but because they took the accelerated depreciation over what they put in, because there was some sort of like really creative financing thing where you can get more depreciation if you're actually guaranteeing the loan. Now they owe the IRS money. They lost money, but they owe. Very weird. I can explain it. All right. And it's just like, it's what I call parachute economics, man.
What economics?
Parachute economics.
It's parachute economics.
It's my term. I coined it. I tell people, you don't want to be in a situation where the parachute doesn't open, you die.
Oh, got it. Yeah. I got you.
Like you're playing for 100% of like, oh, it's 130%, or it's 30% IRR, or I lose everything.
Right.
There's better.
That's not asymmetric returns.
Yeah. Go to Las Vegas, put it on red. At least you get a comp, on a table and drinks. Drinks.
Got it. Tell me about I just want to pivot here. So one of the questions that, because I'm paying attention to time here too, and I think this is really important.
Don't worry, man. I got plenty of time.
Perfect. But I think this is a really key framing around the conversations of when talking to other investors and what they're going to, think, okay, well, I have all these skills, right? They think I have these skills. I know how to, I can talk to people. I can put together a plan. I can buy this thing. I can do a thing with it. One of the questions I like to ask, or I wanted to ask you is what were some of the things that you had to sacrifice or give up, or that you made intentional decisions to not do so that you could focus on honing this craft of doing real estate? And again, I'm adding a little bit of context here to frame up the question. And what I'm really saying here is there was things that you there's invisible work that has to be done,
sure,
right? And that's what I'm trying to uncover with these questions is like, what are some of the things that people don't even realize, that has to be done when they're thinking about investing. So again,
Well, again, as an investor, it's easy to come to us and say, show me what you invest in. Let me see if I like it or like you, most important, and I invest. Okay.
yeah,
But to get there, to put a property under contract,
mm-hmm.
to basically put sometimes a property on the contract where the capital markets is not there and you have to go hard $1 million. And then you have to go assume, $23 million note, that takes 4 months to do it. And you have to go raise $21 million in equity in the middle of, you know, everybody's thinking about other things and,
Yeah.
you know, sleepless nights.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, literally, hard. This is not easy, right? Especially because we care about the people who invest with us. There's people who are like, you know what? Investors are investors. Some of them will lose money in the stock market. If they lose with money, okay, with me, it's okay. No, zero. We
Mm-hmm.
are all in. I was telling yesterday a friend of mine that I'm all in real estate. I got no retirements. I got no savings. I'm all in real estate because it's what I know. It's because, it's where I know that will not go wrong. Okay. And when I said will not go wrong, obviously it can go wrong. But my point is when you have fixed debt, you have fixed debt for 10 years and you're in the middle of a property where you have people coming in and companies being started, that property will rent.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's people there.
And there's people there. And you were very conservative at underwriting. You had, we put in at least, I will say 1,000 hours manpower, when we buy a property and we create the very detailed offering memorandum. We don't do it for marketing. We don't do it so you see it. We do it because the internal process of creating that, of creating a document so others can see, will bring things that you can, this doesn't make sense.
Right.
Our process internally, our investment committee, anybody in our investment committee, anybody can vote no.
Mm-hmm.
Our CFO that does not know much about real estate, or at least as much as we do, can say, you know what, I don't like this. This doesn't make sense.
Right.
Right. And they have to say why. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we call our own bullshit. And, I tell my partners, okay, if I'm the investor, I will ask you for this, and that. Tell me why this also, we go see the property and, there's a lot of things that Robert Soul can do. Okay.
Soul,
you have to get up from the desk and just go walk.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And walk and talk and, talk to the people and, what do you think about this? Because you're buying a $50 million property.
Yep.
You better know what's happening in that town. Listen, one of the things that we do that I don't know anybody who does it, and I asked it, we underwrite the municipal bond of the cities where we're buying properties. If people look at me like, what?
Yeah, I've never heard that.
Okay, let's think about this. You're buying a property in a municipality that if it goes broke, you will have no services. The schools will go down. People are going to start leaving there. You know how long does it take that? 30 minutes, maybe an hour tops.
Mm-hmm.
There's this thing called Google. You're familiar with it? You can
I know
search it there and, you find whatever. Now imagine if you invest money with me and then we buy a property in whatever city and then 6 months later, the city goes bankrupt and you go like, hey, Danny, did you hear the city went bankrupt? Like, yeah, I just heard it yesterday. I'm like, yeah, but look, there was an article a year ago saying that it was going to go bankrupt. You didn't listen to that?
Right.
That is how detailed we get into that.
Key data point.
And it's, I mean, in 2022, we bid it in 800 bid. I mean, we actually underwrote 850 properties. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar properties, $20-30 million properties. It's not our homes.
Yeah, that's a lot.
We ended up bidding, I don't know, in 30 and winning only 2. I think 2024, by the way, we're very detailed at what we do. We have a CRM, we use Soho, and we track everything.
Mm-hmm.
I think for 2024, the number is going to be like 550.
Underwritten,
we won 1.
Wow.
And in 2023, it was like 500 and we went zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it again, I always say to the investor, we only, this is a great gig when you have a lot of money you can deploy and the market is a good market where you can buy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have to sit down in the market and just wait until something happens.
I, the thing with that question is, and I appreciate your answer to this, because even like just making mental notes on the different parts of your answers, I just want to emphasize a couple of things, because I'm really trying to think about how I can communicate to other people as best as possible. Like, there are so many levels, of having to like understanding, and then proficiency, and then mastery. It's like you're talking about, like, you could spend, I don't know how many hours or days talking about just picking right markets, picking apart markets. And then you talked about even underwriting the municipal bond, like, or the municipal bond, and like having to have the background and understanding the bond, how that works for the city and everything else there. Like, that's just one part of due diligence, let alone you haven't even talked about acquiring the dang
Oh no,
thing.
that's a different story, because now you're under contract. Now you have to spend 20-30K in good lawyers,
Yeah.
right? And one of the things that we pride ourselves in is we never not close on a property we put under contract. We're very upfront. Like, we will not put a property on contract for the sake of putting on contract and then trying to retrade it later. Right. We value our reputation a lot. That's why people bring us deals also. Okay.
Because the certainty of close. Right.
I will tell you one thing. If tomorrow like a billionaire shows up and says, want to start buying multifamily, money does not do anything in this industry. It's about reputation. They'll bring stuff to you because you have good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And, and I think that we've earned that through the years. And then you have to do all the due diligence, and it's on the technical part and the engineers and this and the whole thing, and you have $1 million riding hard.
Yeah.
And eventually you said, okay, I'm gonna be hard, and sometimes you're hard and you don't have all the equity aligned.
Right. You don't have the money ready to go, and
right,
that's your levels of commitment.
Yeah. At the end, things will always go wrong, and you have to be prepared for that. So closing on a $22 million equity raise, if you're Blackstone, you have it in the bank, no sweat, right? If you're a small, emerging manager fund, where one of your family offices go like, well, you know what? I told you yes, but you know what? I'm going to go on vacation, and so I don't feel like it. What?
Yeah. You got to hustle.
Yes.
So again, it's just, just really emphasizing, things that I was asking. There is, the invisible work that goes in to get the level of expertise, the knowledge and levels of knowledge. And, just kind of like, things that most people don't realize, like what happens behind the curtain, which you're talking a lot about from the private money part, and many aspects so far. But just these are the things I think that people really want to know about, that you even want to know about when you were starting and getting into the mortgage business. You wanted to jump in to see how the sausage was made, how it worked. And it's nothing that we can cover over a 20-30 minute conversation.
No way.
But just emphasizing how much breadth there is and how much depth there is.
Well, Steven, let me put it in a way that maybe your audience can understand. I know about computers. I understand how to turn on a computer and do the virus checks and the whole thing.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean I can run a data center. Right?
Yep.
I mean, forget about a cluster of computers.
Yep.
Right? And sometimes people are like, oh yeah, no, I learned about computers and I know how to do it. And now I'm gonna go run a data center.
No way.
And you'd be like, wait, I mean, in order to run a data center, you have to have your 10,000 hours. You have to be in front of many screens learning the things that can go wrong. And those are only things that scars can give you.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the important thing. And I welcome everybody who wants to become a real estate investor as part of a strategy. But to say I'm
Right.
going to become a real estate investor because I want to, I want to disintermediate the expert, just
No
don't.
way. Yeah.
Great, you're going to get a lot of scars. Go do it. Perfect. Okay, but be ready because you're going to get hit hard. You might lose some money, and I know people who are very successful who started that way and says, you know what, I'm just jumping into the water.
Yeah. Yeah. But they have to have a good rubber sole.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, I want to, so I know many, people in tech, by myself included, and et cetera, it's wanted to create impact, better place, and so forth. And, one of the ways you can immediately do that is talk about multifamily properties, making the community better, improving, the buildings and so forth. But also you have the sell to rent. So talk to me about what sell to rent is and where that idea come from. How do you see that improving communities as well? And let's start from there.
Well, the idea didn't come from me drinking. That's a good part.
That's good news.
Man, when I was looking at single families, I already told you I went in about 6,000. And I started in 2000, towards the later part, 2008, 2009. At that time, I had two daughters. Now I have three. They were newborn. One was born in 2007, the other was 2009. And when you walk into houses where people have been, foreclosed and evicted, you feel the energy.
Absolutely.
And when you walk into a pink room or a blue room where babies were there or kids were there, it's like boom, just hits you hard. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense that this happened. Why the banks didn't let them stay here? And then so your mind goes to the social problem, but very quickly go like, come on, let's keep on buying houses because it's what it is, right? There's nothing you can do about it right now. No time to do this thing.
Yeah.
By providence, I think it was 2013 or 14. One of my property managers called me and said, you know what, I cannot show this property. And what can you help me? So I just went there. And the person who came to see the property to be rented, he wanted to rent the property, goes, Danny, you know what? Sad story is that house there in the corner. I used to live there. I owned it. I had, I don't know, $250,000 mortgage. The houses are now worth 80. I default on the mortgage. I'm not going to keep on paying these things. I begged the bank to let me stay here. I'll give them the keys. They said no. And it just didn't make sense. It's family with kids. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to do someday something about it. But then again, go grind and, go buy more houses.
Yep.
So in 2018, when we sold to Cerberus, as I'm looking at everything that we, spend on properties, like property management and maintenance and bad debt and, realtors commissions and all these things, I'm like, why people don't treat the houses as their own? And that's when the light bulb came up. And this is, 2018, 19. And I said, why is it that you can do a leaseback of a computer and a locomotive and an airplane, but the largest asset class in the world, which is single-family residential, does not have a leaseback alternative, does not have an easy button? And so I started thinking about the problem, and one thing that I wanted to do is solve the problem for everybody, not just for the people who are in South Florida or in Atlanta or in places where investors, buy. And so I conceived this model where we are basically allowing homeowners to come to our website after, answering some questions and understanding what they want to do. We connect them with investors who want to buy their houses. And again, this is where you guys will appreciate it because I actually have a patent pending algorithm that looks at data and finds out who the most likely investor for that house is. So as I said, I like to solve the Alaska problem. I'm a Colombian guy, don't know anybody who can buy in Alaska. But if now somebody calls me from Alaska and says, you know what, I'm getting divorced and I need to sell my house, cash out and stay here as a renter, I know that my algorithm will help me find somebody for that.
Sure.
So we already transacted about 100 times in 20 different states, and generate about $1.1 million in revenue. We're actually raising our second seed round. We just kind of stay away from the big VCs. I think that we've been doing this for 5 years. We're about 23 people in Latin America in our team, and we're taking our time. And technology is about iterating, course correcting, and doing it again. But one thing that my CTO way back then in the trading card business, Luis John, taught me that I will never forget and I will carry with me. 9 pregnant women do not make a baby in 1 month.
Dude, it's such a good thing.
Okay.
Like, yes.
And so it happens with business. It's the same thing. You cannot accelerate the aging process of a good rum or a good wine. It needs time, right? And if you can hack it, great. But there's nothing like time, right? And in entrepreneurship is the same thing. And I think that a lot of the companies that get funded by VCs get given $10 million and say, go run fast.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up collapsing because, again, their business model is, I'm going to give a lot of money to 100 companies. 2 will survive. The other 98 will die. Mm-hmm. That's not good odds for me. It's good odds for them.
Yep.
So we decided, you know what? We're going to create a very solid platform with very deep roots, with, nested in technology, where we're solving not the problem for the few, but, the problem for the many. Mm-hmm. And so our clients on the other side are the mom and pop investors who want to buy properties that have good tenants. So if you are out there and you still want to buy properties and single families that you want to own, do me a favor, don't concentrate on the property, concentrate on the tenant. I'd rather buy a really good tenant who wants to stay in that house for the next 10 years because that's where everybody, of their family is living, is somebody who owned their home for, 5 years and knows how to fix everything, mm-hmm. and it's willing to stay there for longer. That type of tenant will not give you any headaches.
Totally.
And people said, well, what happens if they die? Get a life insurance on the guy. Or just, right. You rent it again to somebody. It's the draw of the luck, right? It's like with anything, right? But I think that's a great sort of way of solving the problem of, I want to own a house and I'm not sure about what type of a tenant I'm going to get. Look for people who want to stay in their house and stay as a renter. And again, I once saw Elon Musk. By the way, Elon, if you're hearing this, love you, dude. Great guy.
I'll send the clip to him.
There you go. If you run into him in Austin, do me a favor, say hi for me. I saw once Elon Musk saying, what happens if Tesla tomorrow is not the best electric car company? Says, you'd be like, that's great. It means that somebody else is doing it better than I did.
Exactly.
Right. And again, I tell people, do leasebacks. Leaseback is a great way of buying homes. And you have any questions, shoot me an email, right? I'll help you through it, right? I want this to be an alternative way of buying a house, not just, and I think that we're solving a really good problem for the market.
Super cool.
And by the way, it's a problem that it's a global problem, because it's not only the States. I mean, got a call from Mexico. There's like, hey, Danny, can I copy you? Can I do something? Like, please do. That was a year and a half ago. The guy hasn't done anything. But, everywhere in the world, you have people who are divorcing, who have a home and they need to sell it and, kind of rent it back and split the pie. Or somebody who's retiring, or somebody who has equity. There's $30 trillion, $30 trillion of locked up equity in the United States.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The number's stupid.
Yeah. I mean, because to your point too, and I think it's that question of what business are you really in, right? Which is how you're answering earlier. It's that we're not in the real estate business. We're in the demographics business. It's not in real estate business. You're in people business and so forth. And so just like you're talking about, it happens everywhere because we are in the people business. I mean,
yes. At the end, we used to give our tenants turkeys in Thanksgiving, literally the bird. Like the frozen bird. Imagine running around with, trucks full of like 800 birds. Because we had 400 single family houses, one small multifamily. Eventually, smarted out, we gave people Publix cards. But it was cool because you get to talk to people.
Right.
You get to talk to people and you get to connect with them. And, the people who got the bird the first was the people who were in eviction.
Mm,
You know,
yeah.
because the people probably need it the best, the more. So it's always the your landlording will be as good as the tenant you have, and the tenant you have will be as good as you treat them.
Get a couple things out of here and send some quotes for you, Danny.
Cool, awesome.
Tell people where they can find you.
PIAresidential.com, PIAresidential.com. You can email me at Danny, DANNY, at PIAresidential.com. I'm in LinkedIn. Please follow me. I publish very cool stuff once in a while, LinkedIn. Also, you can see some of the articles that are written in Forbes, Danny Kattan, and I have some cool podcasts and webinars out there. So, and again, and any questions that you guys have, I love helping people and teaching people, and I learn more by talking to people who are seeking answers to questions than anything else. Cool books to read, like if you're really into it. Peter Linneman, who was my professor at Wharton, has an excellent real estate book, Principles of Real Estate, and he has a quarterly webinar with Willie Walker from Walker and Dunlop. He's an amazing guy to hear on real estate, and I highly recommend him.
Awesome. Well, I super appreciate being here. I know we kind of bounced around here, but I think there were some really great nuggets. I had a good time. I learned a bunch of stuff, and I really appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much. And all these things will be in the show notes too. So go ahead, connect with Danny, ask him questions, and can just continue learning. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.